Despite President Trump's claims that grocery prices are, quote, going down, unquote, they're definitely not doing that. In fact, the cost of some particularly salient supermarket items have surged over the past year. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the price of beef increased by 16.4%, the price of coffee rose by 19.8%, and meanwhile, a Wall Street Journal poll finds that by 10 percentage points, more voters disapprove than approve of Trump's handling of the economy. And Trump's tone-deaf response seems to be, let them eat cake. Or maybe broccoli. You may remember back in November, Trump threw a Great Gatsby party, a Great Gatsby-themed Halloween party at Mar-a-Lago mere hours before tens of millions of people lost their SNAP benefits. Well, last weekend, Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort hosted the American Humane Society's Hero Dog Awards Gala, a lavish event featuring entertainers wearing 18th century costumes and creepy dog masks. Jason is still with us.
Is that you, Jason?
It's my side hustle. I dress up as a dog for weird Eyes Wide Shut parties.
Also joining our conversation, who we will not subject to that sort of hazing, is Natasha Sarin, professor at Yale Law School and president of the Budget Lab at Yale. Natasha, we're going to get into the numbers in a second, but first, Jason, I want to get your thoughts on this interesting Eyes Wide Shut party.
I'm glad I brought that to the table literally today.
Well, you have
Your expertise.
Yes, yeah, I have the experience. Well, this party was different than the others. No, so I think it's interesting. Donald Trump, number one, he talks out of both sides of his mouth with this thing. He's like, the economy's doing great. It's never been better. America is back. It's booming. And then he's also like, your kid can only have one doll for Christmas, and every house needs one pencil. Yeah, that's it. But the numbers don't lie. Like, he's down 10 points, like it said in that Wall Street Journal report. But can we just talk about how weird these parties are? Like rich people are weird, and Donald Trump is weird. And it's okay. I think it's great. Humane Society, let's raise some money for that. But it's done in such a weird way, and it is so tone deaf. And I think it's because Donald Trump, in his mind, the economy is doing great for him. You know, there's been reports he's made $3 billion. His businesses have since he became president. So the economy is doing great for him and his wealthy friends and the guests of these parties. But for the Trump supporters that I talk to, they're not the ones being invited to these parties. They're not the ones benefiting.
Well, Natasha, is it going to help? Apparently, the president is planning to speak about affordability in just a matter of days in front of an audience at Davos. That's an audience that represents, your everyday American, no?
People who eat $3 a meal. That's crowd, right?
It's interesting that I've kind of been describing this economy as almost like a reverse Robin Hood economy, because it really has this feel of take from the poor and give to the rich. You had this giant tax bill that was passed over the course of the summer that actually lowered the incomes of the lowest decile of the distribution when you combine it with tariffs by something like 7%. And what it did to the very top of the distribution was it delivered massive tax cuts to the kinds of people who donated to President Trump. And when you know that and understand that in the context of an economy where when people go to the grocery store, they're seeing coffee prices that are 16% higher than they were previously, precisely because of a tariff agenda that's being effectuated by this president, I actually think that's tangible to people, and I think they feel it, and I think that's a little bit what you're starting to see in some of these numbers.
All right, so we were joking about it, but I do want to play for you this soundbite of Brooke Rollins, the agriculture secretary, talking about affordability and the cost of meals in this country and what people should be eating. Take a listen to this.
We've run over 1,000 simulations. It can cost around $3 a meal for a piece of chicken, a piece of broccoli, corn tortilla, and one other thing. And so there is a way to do this that actually will save the average American consumer money.
I don't know. I mean, you're an expert and you're an economist, and you probably run all kinds of simulations. But how do you run thousands of simulations to come to the conclusion that a piece of chicken, broccoli, and tortilla is a $3 meal? Like, wait, just walk me through that.
That's a winning political message for the American public that they want that at real time.
I really can't speak to the nature of those simulations or what they might have entailed.
The Budget Lab has done this.
you guys don't do that at Yale? That's like I thought Yale was supposed to be at like the cutting edge of like simulations and.
Well, I can tell you a little bit about the simulations that we have run, and we've run them on the 80-some days that the effective tariff rate has changed so far in this second Trump administration. And what they translate to is these tariffs that are at the highest level that you've seen in the last century translate to price increases on the order of about $2,000 for the average American family. So if we want the average American family to be able to eat nutritious meals, as we all should, there's like a very quick affordability fix that this administration could pursue, and that's unrolling some of these incredibly high tariff rates, because that's going to lower the cost of goods that we import into this country, but also lower the cost of the kinds of goods that are produced by American producers.
So does the Supreme Court, when they rule for or against Donald Trump's tariffs, they have an extraordinary power over the near-term economy?
They certainly do. I mean, these tariffs that are at play in this Supreme Court case that's upcoming represent about 2/3 of the tariffs that the Trump administration has effectuated in its first year. And if the Supreme Court says, as I frankly, as a, sort of a law professor, think that they should say, that the tax and spending power rests with Congress and it rests with Congress alone, in that case, you have really dealt this very significant blow to this tariff agenda, and you've done so in a way that is going to have the immediate effect of having significant impacts on American consumers who are going to see lower tariff rates. What I worry, though, is that this administration is already readying to use or try to use a bunch of different types of authorities to get us back to where we are now. And what that means is it means a much more uncertainty for American consumers and for businesses as they're trying to figure out, like, how do I plan? What amount am I going to have to pay on imports that I'm bringing into this country?
Jason, do you get the sense that his supporters, they're starting to connect dots, do some like back of the napkin math here and see like the images at Mar-a-Lago, their own bills and
No,
Okay.
unfortunately. Because I always think of it, it's like there's the hardcore Trump supporters that we talk to, but then also all of us living in the algorithm. And not to bring it back to Minnesota, but this just popped into my mind. When I was leaving Minnesota and I was like kind of moved by everything I saw there, the person in front of me on the plane was just scrolling through Twitter, and I could see they were liking every pro-ICE tweet that came out, given a whole different set of information on this person's timeline than you or I get. And from the Trump supporters I talk to, they look at this and they see a huge party and they're like, this is so cool. This is going to be me someday. I'm going to be having a party. You know, Donald Trump, he's promised this. It's going to happen. I'm going to have a huge party at Mar-a-Lago with the weird dogs or whatever. Like, they think that's going to happen.
Sorry,
excuse me. And I just like that she said we ran 3,000 simulations, so there's 2,999 others where maybe nothing else came out that was good. And also, it was the one other thing that was in there, the broccoli, the chicken, the tortilla. I think it's $5. I think it costs more. Like, you have to use that to buy the broccoli. Yeah.
And Natasha, so you talked about one potential fix for the affordability issues that Americans have complained about. There are other things that Americans have seen go up in price that are not related to tariffs. I'm thinking about health insurance, particularly for people who are on marketplace plans who have seen their premiums go up. The Trump administration released a health care plan framework. I don't even remember what euphemism they used for all of this week. It did not actually address
those expiring programs and the 22 million Americans who face higher health care costs today than they did last year.
Didn't mention pre-existing conditions.
No, it didn't mention a whole bunch of things that probably, if you are in the health insurance market, you care about. At what point do you think people will start to, I don't know, that will start to be more salient for people?
Maybe I'm sort of more of an optimist, and I'm obviously an economist, and so it's hard for me to read the political tea leaves. But the 2024 election was in meaningful ways a response to the fact that the American people were feeling the pain of inflation and higher prices. So you have to think that as they are watching their health care costs explode, as housing is incredibly expensive and is going to get more expensive for the American people as interest rates have to rise in order to tame the inflation that comes from these tariffs, as the cost of literally everything that they buy goes up, as it becomes harder to build in this country because we don't have a population of a labor force that is able to support the needs to be able to build, as electricity costs are increasing because of all that's happening with respect to AI investments that are fueling hopefully a productivity boost in the economy, but are also translating into higher prices for consumers today, you have to think that all of that adds up in a way that translates meaningfully to expecting better from the political system with respect to addressing those challenges.
Natasha and Jason.
Thank you, guys.
Thank